Hey everybody, welcome to this special episode of our yall-itics Texas political podcast. It is the yall-itics voter guide today. Wondering, do you have a plan for the March 3rd primary here in Texas? You know, Jason, a lot of times we see the turnout on these primary elections is pretty minuscule here in Texas. And, you know, maybe some people don't go to the polls on that day because they're not totally sure what's on the ballot, who's on the ballot, and it, you know, becomes an intimidation factor. Well, we got the solution for that today. We're going to go through some really big races on this ballot and get you up to speed. And by the time you're done with this, you're going to be ready.
This is the yall-itics voter guide. And I wonder if turnout's going to be as low as it has been in the past, because there's so many competitive races right now.
On both sides,
On
too.
both sides.
Yeah.
You've seen all the news coverage. You've seen the ads that have been out there. There's a lot going on. So I think that's going to draw a few more people to the polls this time right now. But we have to, you know, before we begin here, thank our yall-itics studio, which is essentially our studio these days.
It's amazing.
Our friends at Manhattan Project Beer Company in West Dallas for always having us over here.
Which I'm trying to change the name of. It's the Manhattan Project Beer and Coffee Company, because we're all having coffee here. You know,
for the first segment or two, we're going to
we might have an after dark segment at the end here.
We
where we
are
bring out the
planning
beers.
one. We are planning one.
When I say might, I mean we definitely will. But the coffee's good too.
All right, let's get into it. We have some of our favorite guests with us here, as always. Matt Engel's with us from the Lone Star Project. He's a Democratic consultant, somebody we rely on all the time to take apart some of the biggest races. Vinny Machillo with us. He's a Republican consultant from Glass House Strategy. So again, someone we rely on for his expertise. And Bud Kennedy from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram and Inside Texas Politics joining us as well. Guys, thanks so much for carving out time for us here, because these are races that you guys have been following. You guys want to talk about too, though. Biggest race right now, what do you think it is right now, Vinny? What is the biggest one? Senate?
It's got to be the Senate race, you know, because it's for the first time in forever, it's competitive on both sides of the ball. So we've got, you know, Republicans, and there'll be no Democrats going, well, I think I'll go vote in the Republican primary. It's not going to happen this year.
Yeah, is it going to be split at all? Will you have any cross-party voting?
I don't think so this year.
I don't think so. I don't think so at all. So let's walk through the Republicans first here. John Cornyn, Ken Paxton, Wesley Hunt. If you paid attention at all to TV or to social media or to your own text
Even
messages,
if you haven't paid attention, you've been inundated.
You've been inundated.
And it's been ugly.
Polls show Ken Paxton has the lead in this race. Are those polls wrong right now?
No, I'd say that's right. I'd say Ken Paxton's a little bit ahead. I think this race is kind of locked right now. This certainly goes to a runoff. I think what the Paxton team are doing right now is trying to do the same thing they did in their very first AG race. They're trying to get an implied endorsement. So they're running ads right now that makes it look like Trump is endorsing the campaign. But I don't think he can get over 50. I think this still goes to a runoff.
I was going to say, this has been an ugly race, though. The ads have gotten really personal. Let's say you get to a runoff after this. Can whoever comes out of that runoff, can they gain traction with those independent voters out there, or crossover voters for the general election, because it's such a bloodbath in the actual primary?
I think a lot of it depends on who comes out of it for the general. And I know I'm getting ahead a little bit, but I think if Crockett comes out of the Democratic primary, it's a very different set of voters than if Talrico comes out. So we've got to see how that all matches up. But I don't think the ugly has started yet.
You don't think it has?
No.
What does that mean?
I think when we get to the runoff, it'll be a whole new level of ugly.
Really?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
in
the
those
Kraken will be
ads.
released.
Now, obviously, Matt, you guys as Democrats are watching to see the Republicans take each other apart. They're watching you guys to see what the potential ends are for the general election here. What kind of vulnerabilities are you seeing right now on the Republican side with those three candidates running for U.S. Senate?
Well, I think it's really interesting because while there won't be much crossover voting, I think each party has its own favorite in the other party, and Democrats are pulling for Ken Paxton. And it looks like they may get what they want. Cornyn, I said on the record months and months ago, I think Cornyn is a dead senator walking. I think that he is from a part of their party that I don't know what the word is, but it's whatever a member of a species is when there's so few of them that they are no longer going to be maintained. They'll become extinct. That's John Cornyn, the Republican Party. His type of Republican is dead. I think he's looking more behind him and worried about Wesley Hunt. Now, on our side, we have a really competitive race for the first time. I think it's close, so close that we can't really tell who's going to win. two very different styles. It's clear the Republicans would rather Jasmine Crockett come out the winner there. And I think that we'll see. I'm pretty sure that the Democrats will get what they want out of the Republican side. I think that's left to be decided on our side.
But what does your gut tell you, Matt? You've seen a lot of these. Jasmine Crockett, James Tallarico, you both said how different they are. A lot of polls have shown that, Democrats love that Crockett's a fighter, but Democrats think that Tallarico might be best positioned to beat a Republican come November. Does that help either one of these guys win the election, the primary election?
It helps a little. I think that people who only know a little bit about the candidates, they do see that Jasmine Crockett, she's fiery, she's smart, she's quick, and really good on television. I think people who look and see James is also a fighter, and he's somebody who's proven that he can win a Republican seat. The seat that he won in the legislature was held by a Republican. He went through two very tough campaigns, and so he's proven that he can fight on those grounds. And so I think it's a matter of James really being able to communicate that there's a couple of ways that you can fight. It's not always being loud.
Bud, we see it on both sides, a lot of fervor on both sides here. We talked about how there's probably not going to be a lot of those crossover voters in the primary this time to try to take out a candidate, let's say, on the other side. Democrats, though, haven't won statewide office here in Texas since 1994. Every time the cycle comes around, we hear that this might be their year. Is this possibly
every
going to be
time
their
we
year?
hear this might be their year, and
It's
then
not,
and
right?
then it fizzles out, and everybody goes, oh, maybe not this year, So Democrats are counting on at least believe they may have a chance to win at least 3 offices this year. Believe they may have a chance to win Attorney General, maybe Comptroller, maybe the Senate seat, depending who the Republicans and Democrats nominate. The Senate seat all comes down to November, and it comes down to control of the Senate. Who can help the Democrats take control of it? Within distant reach of taking control of the Senate, who could swing Texas, and then who could hold it for the Republicans? The Republicans are worried that one of their candidates may not be able to hold it. The Democrats are worried one of their candidates may not be able to swing it.
Are these parties going to get what they want, though? Are the Republicans going to get a Crockett to take on, and are Democrats going to get a Paxton to take on?
This comes down to how small that voting group is in primaries in Texas. And what people don't understand is that this is where decisions are made about the future of Texas.
Not November.
Elections,
Yeah.
the districts are all drawn in such a way that nothing is decided in November. Everything is decided in March. The Republican primary decides how Texas will be run for the next 4 years. The Republican primary, and in this case, though, we have a Democratic primary that's extremely important. You have several head-to-head races, Senate, Attorney General, that will be decided this week, or in March, that'll be decided in March, while the Republican races, except for Ag Commissioner, will all probably go to a May runoff. And so, the Democrats will know their decisions right now. They'll have those people will be coming out to vote. The Republicans may set it out until the runoff.
Let's talk about the other big race here, Bud. You just mentioned the Texas Attorney General's race, the race to replace Ken Paxton as AG since he's now running for Senate. Vinny, let's start with you. The Republican side, fiery again. We've seen a lot of ads here. Joan Huffman's running, Aaron Wrights is running, Mays Middleton, and then Chip Roy as well. This is almost definitely going into a runoff. Who has the advantage here? Because we've seen a lot of ads from MAGA Mays, Chip Roy, the people who have the money to get on TV, and then Aaron Wrights has had a number of ads. He's also endorsed by Ken Paxton himself.
Yeah, Aaron Wrights is an interesting character because when he came out onto the scene, he came out with a lot of buzz in Austin. But that campaign's kind of failed to launch, really, in a lot of ways. Hasn't really raised the money and hasn't really got the attention. So,
and he had Paxton's endorsement there.
Even with Paxton's endorsement. Yeah. So, we'll see what the value of that is in this race. But I think this just goes according to the plan. This goes to a runoff, and this is the guys with the most name ID and the guys with the most money. It's Chip Roy and MAGA Mays Middleton. Yeah, so
but Chip Roy has been one of those Republicans, those rare Republicans, who stood up to President Trump. Would that anger any of the MAGA base at all?
Well, certainly Middleton is taking him to task.
Sure.
So he's punching him in the face for that. We'll see. Roy's a tough guy, and I think he can make that work to his favor. But in the runoff, the race will be very different in the runoff. No one's going to get probably more than 35% and get themselves into the runoff. Yeah. So it's all going to become a turnout race, really not a messaging race there.
And same question for you, Matt, on this one. Before we talk about the Democrats running for this position here, this is a competitive and combative race is how we described it in Inside Texas Politics on the Republican side.
Yeah, absolutely, and I like that they're going after each other, and I like if they've got a nominee whose first name is MAGA. That helps us. Also, Chip Roy doesn't really make me sweat too much. This whole thing about standing up to Donald Trump. Well, in the end, he always caves. They call Trump Taco. He's kind of Choco. Chip always chickens out. And
Choco
just
and
Choco and Taco. That's the first I'd heard that.
I love rolling the eyes here.
I want to workshop that one a little bit.
Well, you don't workshop the truth. And the truth of the matter is that over and over again, Chip Roy blusters, throws up his hands and said, I'm not going to stand for it, and then just votes along with Trump on everything.
Why haven't the Democrats running for this? Nathan Johnson, state senator from Dallas, Joe Jaworski, former mayor of Galveston, Texas. None of them have really seemed to have caught some traction or momentum. There's, 40% still undecided in this race? What's going on?
Well, they've got the audacity of running as lawyers and rather than as personalities. And as a result, they haven't gotten a lot of traction, although I would expect, based on him having a base in a Senate district and coming from North Texas, that Nathan Johnson will run first. They'll be in a runoff. And then we'll see what happens from there. And also the governor's race, the Senate race, and some of the other races kind of taken the auction out for them. But both Nathan Johnson and Jaworski are very capable people, and I think if they can get into a fall election, they can run a good race, particularly if you've got MAGA Mays Middleton or Chip Roy running.
And again, this could be a big opportunity for Democrats, Bud. You talked about this being one of those races, but this is a huge wild card because we have so many people who are undecided on the Democratic side going into this primary because a lot of folks just haven't connected with one of these candidates yet.
And this may well go to a runoff too because the two candidates, Johnson and Jaworski so close, it may go to a runoff in the end. The Democrats may be coming back in May.
And we'll watch the undervote, though, on this. I think Democrats are going to come out and vote for the Senate race and then leave.
And walk our viewers briefly through what the undervote is here, because you guys are speaking language they might not understand.
So, I come in and I vote for the race I'm interested in, and I don't vote for anything else.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to see a huge drop-off after Tallarico Crockett, and then I don't vote for anything else.
And who are those other candidates down the
Right,
ballot
it's
anyway?
I don't know.
I think you'll see some tactical stuff too. Nathan Johnson's from Dallas-Fort Worth, big vote center. Jaworski's from the Houston area. So I'd pay attention to where the vote comes from those two, because I think there will be drop-off in other places.
We've got a dozen more races here to get to. We're taking our time on these, so there'll be a long after dark episode.
It's not
on
my
this one
fault
here.
this time either.
Surprisingly, it's not Wheeler asking the long questions on this one, but we have a bunch more to get to here. The Comptroller race, the Ag Commissioner race, the Governor's race, Lieutenant Governor's race, a bunch of congressional seats all across the state. What they say about intergenerational politics as well, whether it's time for older candidates to step aside and let newer candidates get in.
And we don't often talk a lot about comptroller races, but boy, that's
Rare.
become a sexy one this year all of a sudden. We're going to jump into that after a quick break right here. Stick with us. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody. We are continuing now with our yall-itics voter guide for the March 3rd primary here in Texas. And again, one of these races that we don't often really dig too deep down into is for Texas Comptroller. I think a lot of people probably aren't totally really sure what a comptroller even does here in Texas.
The comptroller is the CFO, the chief financial officer for the state. The state's treasurer, maybe, but yeah, it's one of those weird names.
Doesn't usually get a lot of attention either.
It doesn't, but this time, I think the primary race is, especially on the Republican side, is getting a lot of attention because there are names in there that people know. Don Huffines, the former state senator from Dallas, Christy Craddock, railroad commissioner, and Kelly Hancock, the acting comptroller right now,
former state senator,
is a former state senator from Tarrant County,
who has, by the way, Vinny, the endorsement of Governor Abbott here in Texas, and yet in polling he's running way behind.
Yeah, he is, and I mean, you've got Huffines, who spent a lot of money to run for comptroller, a job most people have never heard of and don't know what it is. So we're going to see. I think we're going to see the Greg Abbott roadshow, and I think we're going to see him open up the checking account and spend on behalf of Hancock.
But the days are winding down, though, so you're thinking this goes to a runoff, and that's where we see the money being spent?
100% goes to a runoff. So it's a matter of who gets in with Huffines. Christy Craddock has got to be looking in her rearview mirror right now.
And if the polling is accurate, and the acting comptroller, Kelly Hancock, really is in third place here. What does it say about the governor and his, bets here?
And the value of that endorsement, because I mean, last cycle there was nothing better than an endorsement from Abbott. Has the luster gone off that? We'll see.
Yeah. Here's something else strikes me.
Yeah.
Why is there so much competition, as Jason said too, for a position no one really knows outside of politics? Is this a stepping stone?
Nothing to do with
position?
Comptroller. This is I'm lining up to go run for governor. That's what this job
Stepping
is for.
stone job.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Let's shift off to the governor's race and lieutenant governor's race here too, because what struck me, Matt, and just to remind our viewers who all we have here, Bud Kennedy from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram's with us, Vinny Manchillo from Glass House Strategy, a Republican consultant, is with us, and of course Matt Engel from Lone Star Project, Democratic consultant, is with us too. The governor's race and lieutenant governor's race, Dan Patrick running again for lieutenant governor, Greg Abbott running for his fifth term?
Fourth, right?
Fourth, yeah.
Fourth.
He's been around for a minute here in that position, the longest serving governor in the state. Here's what struck me. Gina Hinojosa, state rep from Austin, Vicki Goodwin, state rep also. They are both polling within single digits of the Republican incumbents. Is that polling correct, do you think?
It probably is correct, but it doesn't surprise me because we've seen throughout this entire year, as we polled at the county level and district level, Greg Abbott's negatives are higher than his positives, and this is really the first time that's happened to him. He's become a national Republican. He's really wears all the MAGA banners and things like that. That makes him probably stronger within the Republican Party than he's ever been, but more vulnerable in the general election. But it's important to remember that the Democratic number's about what you would expect it to be. In the lower 40s, it's that the Republicans down there. So the question is, can the Democrats capitalize on that? Can they get the resources and talk about it? With the resources they can. Gina Hinojosa is an outstanding candidate, better than we've ever run against Abbott, with all due respect to Beto, and certainly very different than, let's say, Lupe Valdez in 2018. Sure. And so with resources, she could push Abbott to the wall. And then with the lieutenant governor, we have a competitive primary there, but if Vicki Goodwin is the nominee, that's the polling we'd seen, she certainly would have a chance, again, with the resources. But that's tough, and Democrats have to decide, what are we going to spend our money on?
Vinny, real quickly, I saw you nodding.
It's a misreading of the poll.
Okay.
Because, yes, she's single digits behind Greg Abbott. Greg Abbott's at 49. This race is over before it starts.
Even with single digits.
$1, he's at 49%.
And I don't think it's a misreading, but Jason, this is just typical Texas.
Right.
I mean, there are 50% Republicans, 43% Democrats. Every time we poll, 7% independents. It's been that way the last few cycles. It used to be 50-40. So that reflects party appeal is all it does. I think that these races, I'm surprised the lieutenant governor's race, that Dan Patrick, because he has some Republican downsides to people who don't like him. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised there isn't more attention to a Vicki Goodwin, and you have this challenge from Marcos Velas, who's an off-the-wall candidate. And you have Vicki Goodwin, who really has a good challenge from the legislature, from her experience, could give Patrick some trouble, has gotten no buzz.
What do you think
Here's
of that, Matt?
the difference. Here's the difference, and this is an important difference. They're negatives. They're carrying really high negatives.
The Republicans are.
The Republicans are. Greg Abbott, Dan Patrick, carrying the type of negatives that Ted Cruz carried in 2018. Again, that doesn't mean they lose. Some of the dynamics of the state it really plays against Democrats, plays to their favor. But the fact that they're not running up big scores, the fact that they're not well-liked by the public generally helps every Democrat down ballot and across ballot.
But Democrats are still going to have to get out that vote, and the question is, you kept mentioning the word resources. Are they going to get the resources they need? They're up against these candidates in the lieutenant governor and governor right now who have these enormous war chests and are prolific fundraisers. Can they bring the money to do this?
That is the question. It's always the question for Democrats. And again, we don't have to outraise or even match the Republicans, but you've got to raise enough and spend enough to reach critical mass. We haven't usually done that in any other, maybe one race every once in a while. The question is, can we do it more broadly than that? And will our Senate candidate be somebody who can help bring those resources in, or will it be somebody that the rest of the country, or even some people in Texas that make investments, will they say, well, we're going to have to wait for another time?
I'm going to go with no.
I was going to say, the question is, does a Talarico or a Crockett bring a longer coattail for the candidates down ballot? That's what the Democrats always count on, is a Beto, some figure at the top who's going to bring in the national money. And in this case, it has to be either Talarico or Crockett.
There's another factor, though, in play. It's other races are going to be a handful of of, and maybe a little more than a handful of very competitive congressional races.
Yeah.
That was the dynamic in 2018. It wasn't just Beto pulling from the top. You had very competitive congressional races pushing from below. And that helps a lot at this time, and you'll see, again, competitive congressional races in almost every part of the state.
Most of those in the Valley, and they're going to swing back to Democrats.
Let's talk about the other race which doesn't get a lot of attention, the Agriculture Commissioner race.
Yeah.
So on the right-hand side is where this is, the Republican side is where this is a big deal. Sid Miller's the incumbent, and he's running against Nate Sheets, the guy who has Nate's Honey.
Yep.
What's fascinating here is that the governor and other state officials have endorsed the challenger, Nate Sheets, over Sid Miller, the incumbent, which I think surprised a lot of people, including the Commissioner Miller as well. But Nate Sheets isn't polling very high, according to the latest U of H poll.
It's that whole endorsement from the governor thing again.
Right, endorsement from the governor thing, and I think that, Sheets has just not been able to get his name out there, has not been able to pull together the resources to do that. So I think he's in the situation where he tells the story, he does well. So it's a matter of being able to tell that story. Texas is a big place.
Can he tell that story, though? I mean, it is a big place where there's a lot of media markets to go to and a lot of voters to actually contact. Can he tell that with the clock running down here with the primaries?
He's running out of time. Now, he's got, Sid Miller's a candidate with a lot of problems and a lot of fatigue around Sid Miller and in a race that people don't necessarily care about. So, he better get on that horse.
All right.
Listen, just remember, Sid Miller's been a Texas symbol for 20 years. When Doonesbury, the comic strip, making fun of Texas abortion ban, he had a combo, but he had a legislator who looked like Sid Miller. He called him Sid Patrick, but it was Sid Miller carried the bill in the House.
He made the comic strips? I did not know that.
So it was Sid Patrick, but it looked like Sid Miller. And he has been a symbol of Texas forever. He's just like a tumbleweed. You can't get rid of him.
Bud always tells me something I did not know.
It could be a major misplay by the governor, though. The governor is back a guy that's probably going to lose. And then you look at Senate District 9, where he appointed Kelly Hancock. Then he lost that Senate district. And now he's appointed Hancock, who probably will run third.
We'll see what the value of that is.
All right, I'm out of coffee now, and so we're going to take this to sort of the after dark version, get some beers around here, and we're going to continue this, I think, on streaming.
A lot more ahead for the yall-itics political voter guide here for the March primaries.
So yall-itics has gone over to the dark side now.
This is the unplugged segment of
Yes, it
yall-itics.
is.
So we switched off from our espressos and our cappuccinos to a few adult beverages here. Cheers, guys. Thanks so much
Wow,
for
Bud
the
Kennedy
the
has
insight.
really gone over
Coffee
to
to
the
coffee
very
stout.
dark side.
Bud, you have the darkest one
this
here.
is
What
the
is
way
that,
it goes.
stout?
This is the coffee stout, man. Coffee
Wow.
to coffee stout.
Okay, we're back here
Birch
at
and both.
the Manhattan Beer Project Manhattan Project Beer Company, and I just only
He's
had
taking
one
an Uber.
sip.
He's taking
I
an
have
Uber
one
back to the
sip.
studio.
That White Sands will get you.
So
That's what it's called.
we're back with Matt Engel, Democrat Matt Engel from the Lone Star Project. Vinny Mancillo with us from Glass House Strategy. He is a Republican ad consultant, and Bud Kennedy, of course, from the Fort Worth Star Telegram. Guys, we talked about the big statewide races. Now let's get into some congressional races here. And Matt, let's start with you. District 33. This is the old Mark Vesey seat. Now it's Julie Johnson running against Colin Allred to replace Mark Vesey here. You know everyone involved here, and this thing has gotten dirty.
Yeah, it's just a tough race against two really tough candidates who have proven to be very good members of Congress. They both served in Congress and served that district well. This district, while it's got the number 33 on it, it's more like the old District 32.
Yeah.
Dallas County only for
it's
people who are
all
watching.
in Dallas
This
County.
was one of the redrawn ones that the legislature just redrew.
Redrawn, a perfect example of a racial gerrymander, in my view, an illegal racial gerrymander. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court didn't agree with me. But I think that it's important to not think about so much what the back and forth is between the candidates. I think it's structurally, look at this race. Both of them has represented pieces of it, but Colin has represented a larger piece of it for more years. And so that gives him, it's not like he's the challenger really running against incumbent. It's like two incumbents running against each other. And
But
also,
Johnson is the latest one, though. So
she's
on,
the most
maybe on her
recent,
constituents' minds.
done a good job.
Formidable
and
candidate,
so
too.
you also have to think about the structure of it. About somewhere between 25 25 and 30% of the turnout will be African American. There'll be about somewhere around 12 or 15% will be Hispanic. The rest will be Anglo. So I think a lot of it's going to be how do they appeal to those segments of the electorate, and some of the things that are said more broadly, they'll get a lot of coverage. They'll matter some. But I think it's going to be who tactically runs the best campaign. Both of them are experienced. Julie is a tough fighter. Colin is somebody, again, who's got really tough, as we saw recently with that video.
He's gotten tough lately, though,
He can
right?
come out.
I mean,
well, let me tell you, this guy's an NFL linebacker. Anybody who questioned his toughness just doesn't know him very well. And so I wasn't really particularly surprised with that. But let me tell you, I think that if Julie went out, she might make the team too. She's pretty tough.
Well, Vinny, it's an interesting thing, though, because when he got tough and when he really made headlines, it wasn't even for the race that he's running in.
Right. I tell you, that video that he did calling out Tallarico is absolutely the best thing he's ever done. You know, previously the things, the Colin Allred they put on TV is like a 1950s TV dad. He's the most boring thing ever. On paper, he should have run away with that U.S. Senate primary. And all his consultants, honestly, he should have fired everybody because whatever they're doing, it ain't working.
But he ducked out of that race
out of that.
and went into this race instead after the maps were redrawn.
But still doing the same terrible stuff. So it's really, honestly, that little piece of video he did about Tallarico, that might win him that race.
You think so?
If anything does, I think
Let's not ignore the obvious. I mean, this is 60% women. Let's not talk about race. Let's talk about gender. 60% women voters in the Democratic primary. Julie Johnson has rallied all the women's groups. This is a circle the wagons race for women's groups in North Texas, not just in that district. They're all going out to keep Julie Johnson, to keep a woman's voice in Congress. And so, I mean, I just see her as building the strength with the majority of the Democratic vote.
Can we head down to Houston now? Because, boy, this one has been
another
wild.
Democratic race, another redrawn seat.
It's been wild to watch, too. This is House District 18, and everyone knows the name Al Green, of course. He's been around for eons in politics in the Houston area. He's been the representative for a long time. We've got fellow Democrat Christian Menifee. They're both vying for this same district, and again, when these districts got redrawn, it started pitting, Democrat against Democrat, trying to hang on. So Menifee right now has the position. He just won the runoff to replace the late Sylvester Turner. But man, I think a lot of people thought that Green would do very well in polling, and right now anyway, this looks like it's Menifee's race to lose.
Well, first of all, I'm not going to let it go that they redrew this district. I mean, this district, again, is a gross racial gerrymander. They combined two black districts into one to make just a super PAC district. Now, Al Green had represented 60% of it, and so you would think that he would have an advantage in it. But the truth of the matter is that Christian Menifee has been doing advertising, running TV for a year. He's out there talking to voters.
He's practiced now.
It's a very dynamic race, and also there really is a sense of he's young, somebody that people see the future in.
So the baton is being handed.
Yeah, there's a lot of affection for Al Green, but that affection may not translate into votes.
Well, let's talk about that because we saw that play out in Austin too with Congressman Lloyd Doggett and Greg Casar. Same thing happened there. The redistricting collapsed the Democratic seats, and there was a question about who would run for that lone Democratic seat in Austin. Doggett decided to drop out of that and pass the baton. Yeah. That's not happening in Houston here.
No, and again, I think that Lloyd Doggett gets enormous credit because I wouldn't have predicted that. Lloyd Doggett's still doing a great job as a member of Congress, really valuable to the state of Texas, but he saw that maybe this is a time where Democrats need some fresh faces and some new blood, and so he stepped aside. That's just not how Al Green's wired.
Vinny, I would say nationally, though, that Republicans are not going to be sad to see Al Green goes if he goes. There's not a lot of love lost there. My question, though, is are Republicans watching this one just from the standpoint of, again, I think a lot of people thought that Al Green would poll so much higher in the early going here. There's a change vote out there, at least according to this poll here, and how much are Republicans watching that?
It is a generational change, but don't ignore the obvious. Christian Menifee's in Houston. He's been working in Houston. He's been all through Houston. The local candidate always has an advantage over someone who's been in Washington for years. Someone who's been in Washington has been away. They haven't been there. Christian Menifee's been there every meeting, every event, every newscast in that intense Houston news environment. He's been there on a daily basis.
But Democrats, Bud, don't Democrats want a fighter now? Because isn't that what's been kind of shown, that no one stood up to Trump? And you see Al Green,
He's a
who
fighter.
stood up in the last State of the Union.
What's the average
got
age of the
thrown out.
Democratic voter now? It's got to be, it's much younger, 10 years younger than the
Well,
Democratic
I think
voter.
people are more savvy about
Republican
fighting
voter.
than sometimes the media gives them credit for. Just because you're up and getting on TV and shaking your fist doesn't mean you're fighting effectively. I mean, Christian Menifee was a very effective fighter in turning back Greg Abbott and Ken Paxton when he was county attorney in Harris County. And so I don't think there's anybody that believes that Al Green's somehow a tougher fighter or more of a fighter than Christian Menifee.
But Vinny,
His time has come and gone. I mean, for Al Green, so it's kind of sad to see him go out this way when really he could have taken the victory lap and been the statesman. He's just hit his sell-by date.
His sell-by date.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see what happens. I mean, everyone's predicting the worst here for Al Green.
I'm feeling my sell-by date here.
I'm with you, bud.
Hey, let's stick with Houston for a moment and talk about District 2. This is one of the much better known members of Congress, Dan Crenshaw, veteran down there. He has a pretty stiff challenge on the right, Vinny, from Steve Toth from the legislature. How's this shaken out? Because this is the biggest challenge that Crenshaw's had so far in his tenure in Congress.
Right. It's interesting because I know we were going to talk about Jared Patterson, and it kind of is similar to Dan Crenshaw. For some reason, there's always a group of the party that doesn't think people like Dan Crenshaw are conservative enough. And so that's it.
We're seeing that everywhere, though, that litmus test,
So they're
right?
trying to run him from the right. And I
What do you think about that as a consultant?
I don't like it. Because I think Dan Crenshaw is the kind of person that we want to run for office. He's a little younger, he's a little more modern, he knows how to deal with social media, he has his own podcast. So, I think that's the kind of candidate that we want to put forward. I kind of feel like people like Steve Toth are sort of a step back in a lot of ways.
Vinny, who is that group? It's the Turning Point Action, Faith and Values Conservatives, backing Steve Toth. Steve Toth said a few years ago that we wouldn't get more conservative government until we elect Body of Christ Christian conservatives.
Right.
That's what he said. That's exactly who his appeal is to. That's who he wants voting for him. That Turning Point Action is turning out. The faith and values voters will always have an advantage, particularly in a really tiny primary like this, over a mainstream, or in this case, even a mega mainstream conservative.
Is Crenshaw in trouble, though, do you think?
No, I don't think so. I think Crenshaw holds on. I think he is well liked, and I think he's got a base. I think he's going to be able to hang on.
Well, I think that one of the things that's being misinterpreted is this view that that Turning Points USA is a segment of the Republican Party. It's really what the Republican Party has turned into. The smaller segment of the Republican Party is the more establishment types, the types like Dan Crenshaw. There's a lot to speak for Dan Crenshaw. Again, somebody who's a decorated veteran, a Navy SEAL. All those things that come in, and Toth is somebody who comes in really from a destructive side. I mean, he may not have reached his sell-by date, but he arrived spoiled. And so the question is whether or not that segment of the Republican Party prevails, not just in that race, but in race after race after race.
Let's talk.
This metaphor about shelf life is phenomenal.
Sorry I started that.
We
Vinny,
didn't come prepared for that.
Vinny, I've got to ask you, because you invoked the name of Jared Patterson, and we do want to get to that. That's House District 106. He's the incumbent there.
Legislature.
In the legislature, and I'm curious about this because this is another situation where you've got somebody running to his right now.
Every cycle.
And the person running to his right is Larry Brock. And for people who don't know him, he was one of the Jan 6 rioters who served more than a year in federal prison. He was pardoned along with all of the others by President Trump when he got back into office, retired U.S. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel. What are your thoughts on this one? Because that is a race that I think got a lot of people's eyebrows raised.
Yeah, and in every cycle it seems like there's always a group of people who go, well, Jared Patterson's not conservative enough, even though he's pretty darn conservative, and they try to run somebody to his right. So here we go again.
A former Jan 6er, too.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that
Jan
as a
6er,
consultant?
So we're finding even more extreme candidates to run against him. Voters seem to think Jared Patterson's plenty conservative enough. He hangs on, it'll be no problem.
And sticking with Congress here, let's jump back to Congress here briefly too. District 30 is the race to replace Jasmine Crockett in Congress. Matt, let's talk about that. It's Pastor Freddie Haynes from Friendship West Baptist Church, Southern Dallas County, against Barbara Mallory Caraway, former Dallas City Councilwoman, former state legislator. What struck me here is Freddie Haynes has no money on hand, according to the latest filings. Barbara Mallory Caraway didn't file yet for her latest filings. Is this coming down strictly to name ID on this race here?
This is as close as you get to a congressional seat being appointed. that I think that Jasmine Crockett pretty much appointed her successor, just like she was pretty much appointed by Eddie Bernice Johnson. And you'd like to see more competition in that race. Freddie Haynes will be a very, very good member of Congress, but there's just no contest there.
What do you think about that, Bud? Because he hasn't been in politics before. He's been on the periphery, obviously.
But he has been
Rainbow
in politics.
Push.
He's a profile. He's friends with Obama, Obama's pastor in Chicago, Jeremiah Wright, who made such a political splash. Freddie Haynes has filled in for Jeremiah Wright. He's a friend of Jeremiah Wright's. He's very much been in politics.
Yeah.
While Barbara Mallory Caraway has been more on the business side of Dallas, has worked with Dallas people, but is not seen as much of the really progressive figure for that district.
And this is what, her 6th time running for this seat?
She's run for it, I think, every time that the late Congressman Eddie Bernice was in there as well.
Yeah.
Let's talk about something you mentioned early on in this episode here, Vinny, and that's South Texas. I believe you mentioned that.
Yeah.
The Tejano star, Bobby Polito, Rebecca Lopez, when she did the episode with us on Yall-itics, she wore her mini skirt for. I'm like, are you kidding me? She's been a long time fan.
Rebecca came ready
of Bobby Polito, but he's running against the Republican incumbent down there, providing he wins the primary against the doctor down there. But it looks like it could be Bobby Polito versus Monica De La Cruz. This thing is not only a bellwether, but it's also highly combative down there. Any predictions on this, Matt? Because the talk now, which I know you've heard too, is that the South Texas is swinging back towards Democrats after going for Republicans.
The whole country's watching this.
Where do you think
this
this
I think
is?
swing is the important thing. Is it
really swinging, though?
I think it certainly could swing. I think when you're looking at districts that are drawn for Republicans that Democrats can capture, this is probably first on the list. Bobby Polito is an excellent candidate. He's very, very local. He's known because he's a Tejano star. And he's running against Monica De La Cruz, who's going to have to wear the national MAGA brand the whole time. And I say swing because I think in Texas particularly, the Hispanic vote is a swing vote. It's a persuasion vote. It's not part of the Democratic base, and it's not that they've turned to the Republicans. It's up for grabs. And I think that Bobby Polito's the type of candidate that can pull that for his candidacy and also help other Democrats in the meantime, because there's a couple of competitive state house races underneath that.
Vinny, there's been, even some Republicans, some Trump supporters have really been loud about this, saying, hey guys, you need to pay attention to what's going on down here in South Texas with this, Latino vote, Tejano vote. They're saying that support has been eroding since we saw President Trump just run the margins up huge in 2024. What are your thoughts about the Valley right now and the vulnerabilities for Republicans?
No, this is a real canary in the coal mine race, and I think this race turns on economy, just like a lot of the national races.
How about on immigration, though? That's what they've been sounding the alarm bells about. Some of these, home builders and so forth down there have been saying, hey guys, this is going too far for some people down here in South Texas who, might have otherwise, continued supporting Republicans.
I still think it turns on economy. I think if people are feeling like the economy is better for them personally, not just stock market or numbers like that, then that race comes our way. If they're not feeling it, then we lose it.
But how about immigration? I mean, Jesus, it seems like what happened in Minneapolis has really changed a lot of Latinos' minds in polling.
I think it gets processed between now and November.
There's a lot to happen between now and then.
Well, immigration, the economy is the same thing down there. And all of this attack on immigration is keeping construction workers from coming to work. So you've got a lot of the home builders, the business industry there are very upset about that. And also they do see on TV, they see a Hispanic woman jerked out of her car and dragged down the street. That has a real impact on people and whether or not they feel safe in their own neighborhoods.
Immigration is an age issue in the Valley. The older voters in the Valley wanted the young immigrants to stop racing their cars, stop running through the neighborhoods, stop all the crime on their way to Houston, Dallas, whatever. It's an age issue. Instead what they're seeing older men, women pulled away from their families, pulled out of their homes. They don't want to see old people picked on by ICE. They want ICE to round up the people who are causing trouble, not the people who are quietly living next door.
Hey, before we wrap things up here too, let's talk about a House district, state legislature seat, district number 61. This is Collin County. Carissa Richardson is the incumbent up there, and Frederick Frazier, former Dallas police officer who was the lawmaker in this seat. He ended up not running for re-election after he was caught impersonating a public servant by trying to go after his opponent's signs. He's running again for this seat here. This is kind of an interesting race to watch because the governor was backing Representative Richardson here. What are you watching for in this race? Does Frazier have a shot at getting his seat back?
I was hoping
getting his seat back.
I was hoping it was an interesting race to watch, but it's not.
It's not?
I watched the forum, and I can't believe how dull it was. It was like two candidates who are almost using the exact same words to answer all the questions. I think she will hang on to it, but it's just like if you're a voter in 61, neither candidate is doing anything to step out.
So there's nothing differentiating them, so it comes down to personality and who gets out the vote.
It comes in, name ID and who you might like a little bit better, and institutional things like getting out the vote.
Guys,
it's a real missed opportunity for both candidates. Neither one of them is doing anything to set themselves apart.
Tiny turnout, faith and values voters have the advantage. I think Teresa Richardson keeps it.
Can we round robin just before we end this today and talk just each one of you give us what it is that you're watching for in this primary election, because everybody's already thinking ahead to November. This is supposed to be, such a momentous election, especially for a midterm. It seems like it's gotten a lot more attention this time around. Here in Texas, what specifically are you watching, Bud? We've talked about the Valley, but is there something else that pops on your radar to keep a close eye on to help you read the tea leaves going into November?
I think the thing to watch is just whether Democrats are able to vote for the most winnable ticket up and down the line. The Democrats have a habit every cycle of picking somebody, nominating somebody who's the worst candidate on the ballot to put out in the general election. They MJ Hagar wasn't that good of a candidate. Rochelle Garza wasn't that good of a candidate. They have a habit of picking poorly. The question is whether Democrats will actually put forward the ballot that might win in November. There's at least 3 races, maybe 4, that they might win statewide depending how the Democrat-Republican balance goes.
And that hasn't happened in more than 3 decades, so that would be extraordinary even if they pulled one of them.
My sell-by date was still in effect.
Bud is so giggly about this. I love it.
How about you, Vinny? What are you keeping a close eye on?
I'm looking to see who comes out of the U.S. Senate primaries for both the Republican and Democrat side, because depending on the matchup there, it's going to completely change what the voting makeup looks like. If it's a Crockett versus Paxton, that's a completely different set of voters than a Cornyn versus Tallarico.
Matt?
Yeah, I think that the way that Democrats stay fresh here is so that the electorate needs to see the Republicans as the national party. I think that's the party that can be local, talk about Texas issues, talk about affordability issues. To the degree that the Democrats can do that and not become nationalized, it gives them their best shot. And Republicans have now embraced the national MAGA. They all bow at the feet of Trump and have become really submissive, very non-Texan. And I think to the degree that Democrats show that they've got a fist and and Republicans are bowing down, that's the dynamic that we're looking for.
We have seen those primary Republican ads. I mean, they're tripping over themselves, even if they don't have the endorsement to look like they've got the endorsement of Trump. Do you see that changing after we get past the primary here, to widen it out?
Are they going back to the middle?
You know what? It's interesting. I watched a bunch of political commercials. I do it all day. 95% of the commercials from both sides have Donald Trump in them. So both sides feel like Donald Trump is an advantage for them going into the election. So I don't think that's going to change between now.
You don't think so?
I think it'll still be Donald Trump all the way. He's still very popular in Texas.
But Democrats have run on that before and haven't been successful. Anti-Trump messaging.
Let me tell you, I'll be happy if Democrats are sitting their opponent in Trump's big lap every day. That there's plenty of room there; they'll all fit.
I think it comes down to the generic ballot. I think when we get to, like Bud was talking about before, the governor's race will be 50 to 42, something like that. And I think a lot of these statewide races will finish up that way.
The way falls. Guys, thanks so much. Really appreciate the input as always. Bud Kennedy from Fort Worth Star-Telegram, Vinny Manchillo, Glass House Strategy, Republican ad consultant, and Matt Engel from Lone Star Project, Democratic consultant as well. Thanks to Manhattan Project Beer Company in West Dallas for always having us here. Some of the best coffee, some of the best beer in all of West Dallas. People's Republic of West Dallas.
Yep.
This is where it should be, and we always appreciate them having us. But
We
guys,
have
it's
set up
good
shop
content.
here for sure, and big thanks to the Manhattan Project here for having us once again. It's amazing that we haven't outlived our shelf life here. You know,
Date yourself,
weird.
Wheeler, not me. All right. but listen, 2026 is going to be a tremendous year politically, and it all starts March the 3rd with the primary. So make sure you make it a point to go participate.